Well, it's time now for a check of the French newspapers. For that, I'm joined by Elena Casas. Good morning to you, Elena. Now, what have the French press been making of Sarkozy's attempt to court the far-right voters?
Well, his comments yesterday when out campaigning in Longjumeau in the Paris suburbs, when he said the Front National was not taboo or talking to the voters were not taboo, that has really shocked the French papers because the Front National, of course, in French politics is taboo. It has been for a long time. When they got through to the second round in 2002, of course, Marine Le Pen's father, Jean-Marie Le Pen, managed that. Jacques Chirac, the then president, said that there was an absolute barrier between the mainstream right that he represented, which was, of course, inherited from de Gaulle, from a French resistance tradition, the Republican right, as the French would say, and the extreme right represented by Jean-Marie Le Pen, who was known, of course, for anti-Semitic remarks. Now the papers say Nicolas Sarkozy has broken down that barrier. Here he is on the front page of Libération, looking rather severe, with the quote under it, "Le Pen is compatible with the Republic." Now, for the paper Libération, and this is really beyond the pale, this comment, he really has broken an extremely important taboo. Now, he said this, of course, went out campaigning yesterday. They call it a cynical and desperate move. It seems, they say, the values of excluding people depending on where they come from have flourished under Sarkozy like never in France under the Second World War. They compare him to Marshal Pétain, who, of course, ruled Vichy France, the southern part, under Nazi Germany. So quite strong language being used there by the newspaper. He, of course, made a very direct appeal to Le Pen's voters yesterday, calling them France that suffers, France that goes out to work, and called them to a date on the 1st of May, where he plans to have a rally by the Eiffel Tower to support what he calls the real values of work. The satirical paper Le Canard Enchaîné has jumped on this as well, ready for anything to recover the voices that voted for the FN. Sarkozy attacks with Marine's artillery. And in their front page, they say, how on earth has Marine Le Pen managed to de-demonise the image of the Front National so completely in such a short time? Have voters completely forgotten why thousands of them came onto the streets to protest in 2002 when Jean-Marie Le Pen got through to the second round? Have they forgotten that just 3 months ago, Marine Le Pen was pictured at a ball in Vienna dancing with neo-Nazi groups? How is it possible that she has moved her party from the extreme, untouchable fringes to being so close to the mainstream right in such a short period of time, they say? Where is the historical memory of the French?
Now, you mentioned a little earlier on the plans for a May Day rally on the 1st of May, and that's got people to the left of the political spectrum here in France up in arms, really, hasn't it?
Yes, over at L'Humanité, they are furious. Sarkozy's raid on the 1st of May is the Communist paper's headline. They compare him again to Marshal Pétain much more explicitly on this front page. They've managed to find a quote from February this year when Sarkozy said that the unions were falsely representing the working people. They were entrenched economic interests that didn't really represent them. They've managed to find a 1940 quote from Pétain where he says virtually the same thing. Now, they're angry about Sarkozy trying to usurp the 1st of May, as they would put it, because for them it's a traditional working class union celebration, very widely celebrated here in France. Dates back, they say, to 1886, when some American unionists were campaigning for an 8-hour working day. The last thing they want to say is to have it taken up by the right.
Now, what does Marine Le Pen make of all of this? She presumably doesn't want to see Sarkozy succeed when it comes to winning over too many of her voters.
Absolutely not. According to Le Monde, she's betting on the complete collapse of his election campaign and of his party. The strategy of the FN, they say, is to implode the right. Now, essentially, what she's betting on, they reckon, is that she's looking forward to the parliamentary elections in June. She's hoping Sarkozy will lose so badly in 10 days' time that then a number of his MPs will think, actually, maybe I'll join the Front National. She wants to become the leader of a right-wing majority against President Hollande. So the last thing she's going to do is encourage her voters to vote for Sarkozy. Now, she's hoping that in those legislative elections, the Front National, which at the moment has no MPs in the French Parliament, can get around 35, they're hoping for. Now what they need to do is get 12.5% in the first round of those legislative elections to go through to the second round, which is a week later. And of course that might produce some rather complicated situations for the UMP, because if you've got a Front National candidate taking on a socialist one in some seats, what will they then do? Will they call on their voters to form what the French call a Republican front, that is to say, vote for the socialists to keep the Front National out? Or are they moving so closely together that they will actually end up voting for the Front National? Quite shockingly, there's a poll in Les Echos, the business paper today, which says that 2/3 of Sarkozy's voters would back the party, the UMP, reaching an agreement with the Front National before the legislatives so that the two parties can govern together in Parliament and keep the left out from controlling Parliament. And when you think just how taboo the Front National was just a few years ago, it's quite shocking that 2/3 of Sarkozy voters would be willing to reach an agreement with them.
Indeed. A big change on the political scene here in France. Thank you very much indeed, Elena Casas.